Okay, complete change of direction. Motorsport. Today's not only the Bathurst 1000, the mecca of V8 supercars, but also the Formula One race will be in Qatar later on today. But that brings us to David Dicker, one of Australia's great innovators. He created Dicker Data back in the late 70s as a distributor of computers, hardware, then software, and now cloud-based programs. His suppliers are the biggest computer companies in the world. His customers, some of the biggest companies in Australia. It has more than $3.1 billion in revenue each year. But David Dicker, the chief executive and chairman of that company, has a separate passion: motorsport, and Formula One especially. You see, he wants to operate one of its teams, especially as the governing body, the FIA, considers expanding from 10 teams in Formula One to 12. I spoke with David Dicker this week from his motorsport headquarters in New Zealand and asked him at what point he pivoted into motorsport and just what prompted it.
Well, I wouldn't call it a pivot, it's just an extra thing. It doesn't mean that I've reduced my commitment to Dicker Data in any way. But, you know, I've had a lifelong interest in cars. I had an interest in cars before I started Dicker Data. I've been following Formula One since the 70s, and when the opportunity came up, well, we had to take it, whether we thought we could get there or not.
So then take me to Formula One and the FIA and its decision about a new team. It's now knocked back your application to become the 11th team in Formula One, but did you ever really think you had a prospect of becoming that team?
If I'm honest, no. I thought Andretti would always get in regardless, and but like I said, you've got to put in, because the opportunities come up and you have to take them and do the best you can. And I still think we got a better bid than Andretti. Our bid has a lot more interesting things that are important to Formula One moving forward.
So is the answer really in Formula One to buy a team and not necessarily try and create one from scratch?
Well, you could buy one. I've never really been that strong on the acquisition front, but the prices that they're talking about for the teams now are so high, I don't really think they're commercially viable. You know, like if you look at it from a pure investment point of view, pretty hard to justify that amount of money. And one of the other issues is that until they started with the budget cap, most of these teams, especially the lower end teams, are worth almost nothing because they didn't make money. They lost money every year and chewed up, you know, tons and tons of money, so they had no value. So now they've got a value on them that's been achieved in a very short time frame, and I think that needs to shake out a bit.
Your car, the FZ, I mean, it's a quick car, so is your aspiration at Rodin to build a car that's even faster than Formula One so that you can compete with them?
Oh, it's not the car we've actually built to be quicker than F1's called the F0. We'll have the prototype of that running in a week or two. But, you know, it's not designed to compete against F1 as such, because the F1 guys have got a raft of regulations that restrict their performance, whereas the F0 has only restricted by the laws of physics.
So, in that case, what would your car look like if you got up with this ambition? If you became the 11th or even the 12th team in Formula One, what would your car look like in comparison with the current F1 cars?
Oh, it'd look the same because you're operating under the same rules. So the variations would be very small, and they'd only be things like all this talk about side pod shapes and various bits and pieces. They're all things that the guys who follow F1 can see clearly, but to the general public they all look the same, and our car wouldn't look any different. The F0 looks completely different to an F1 car because it's a different type of car.
What I'm even thinking here is that your car manufacturing business, as you create these vehicles, you must also be creating technology that's potentially saleable elsewhere. Is that the business model, or is this really a hobby?
It's definitely a business model. I never started this project as a hobby. I'm not a hobbyist. I don't like hobbies that much, to be honest. I like going to work and I like to be involved in ventures that can make a dollar. So the idea's always been to build cars to sell to customers.
So you can build cars or build components, but there's more money. Which of those in this business model?
Cars. Oh, there's more money in cars, and it's more interesting anyway. We will probably sell some of the components separately, but our aim has always been to build a complete car.
Okay, so car manufacturing has died in Australia and in New Zealand a long, long time ago. And you're out there now trying to become a car manufacturer. I know it's a specialised car, I'll admit that. But is it possible in New Zealand to actually build a globally viable vehicle?
Well, we think it is, or we wouldn't try and do it. The way we build the cars and the whole thing's just totally different to the Australian car industry, which wasn't Australian anyway. The only part of it that was Australian was a handful of, middle wage factory workers, basically. Most of the cars were, they were all overseas owned. The profits went overseas if there ever were any, and that was a whole different story. What we do is we design a unique car and we build it using high-end strategies and high-end equipment, and it's a high-end product, so completely different.
So David, tell me about trying to get the skills and trying to get the technical people on board to help you make these vehicles. Are they available in Australia and New Zealand?
Well, we've found them, and obviously the machinery is important, and you can source that machinery anywhere in the world, and there's no one place where you get all that stuff. There's numerous countries that make this machinery, some in Asia, some in America, some in Europe, and there's still plenty of smart kids down here.
I've heard you say previously, famously, that you work 7 days a week, and it's what you do that makes you competitive, and it's the utter focus that you've got. So explain how you now divide your time between Rodin and also, Data, where you're still the executive chairman and the chief executive.
Well, I get the emails on the sales figures every day. I get the emails from my other directors and managers, so I'm still completely in the loop, and I go to the board meetings every month. So, it's really not too far different. I haven't done day-to-day work there since '99. I used to get all the orders out in the afternoon for the pickups, but I stopped doing that in '99. So since then, I haven't done what you'd describe as day-to-day work. I just do the management work, strategy work, and all that kind of stuff, and you can pretty much do that from anywhere.
So just explain your motivation. I mean, the motivation to be there 7 days a week and completely absorbed in both of these enterprises.
How would I know? You'd have to ask my parents, although they weren't that obsessed. Look, I don't know. It's just I enjoy it, and if you enjoy it, it's not really a job. And if you want to succeed, you need a commitment bordering on obsession. It's just the way it is. And, while the other guys are on that work-life balance stuff, I'm just plugging away. And after a pretty short time, you just pull ahead.
You also said you wanted to put a female driver in the seat of a Formula One vehicle, the very first time. Just explain whether you ever think that will happen under the current F1 conditions, and what would it take to put the first female driver into one of those seats?
Well, all it would take to put one in, leaving aside the super licence points question, which is only a minor one, all it would take is a team to put someone in. It's just that straightforward. There's no magic barrier that they have to cross, but they're not really interested in it. They talk a good story, but the reality is they're not really interested. Look, you could run Jamie Chadwick in F2 for €2 million. That's how much an F2 seat costs, and €2 million to the F1 guys is peanuts. So if they were serious, they put her in an F2 car. There's new F2 cars coming for next season, and they'll be a bit easier to drive in terms of the steering than the old cars, as I understand it. And someone could put Jamie in that car next season if they wanted to, but they won't.
So, David, just a final thing. Have you lost heart as a result of being knocked back this time from having a Formula One team, or do you just keep plugging away?
Well, I was dejected for a day, but no. Look, I mean, it takes years to get things across the line. Look, with Data in the early days, it took us 3 years to get Compact. They were bought out by HP later, but it took us 3 years of badgering them to get access to their product. So I'm used to grinding away.
David Dicker, it's lovely to chat to you. Many thanks for your time today.